Hi, my name is Ashley Sears. I'm the Director of Women's Ministry at Bridgepoint Church. Thanks for joining us online. I want to encourage you to comment below. Let us know where you're watching from today. Now, before we get started, don't forget to download your sermon notes. The link can be found in the description below. And stick around after the message for some important information.
Walking around these walls, I thought by now they'd fall, but you have never failed me yet. Waiting for change to come, knowing the battle's won, but you have never failed me yet. Your promise still stands. Great is your faithfulness, your faithfulness. I'm still in your
to our online service, and wherever you're watching us or even whenever you're watching us, we are really glad that you're part of our online service. And one of these days, all this stuff is going to be over, and it'll be a great day when we're able just to gather back together and be in the same room and worship together. We'll look forward to that. Now, over the last few weeks, we've been talking about something that we all struggle with, we all have in common. It's this battle that plays out in our mind. And it really doesn't matter who you are or where you are in life, what you're going through. It's the struggle, and the struggle is this. It's the struggle between God's truth about you versus Satan's lies about you. And I hope that over the last couple of weeks, we become more aware of this struggle that is happening. And, we've learned that we have the responsibility and the capability to take those lies that Satan has told about us and capture them and destroy them. And I hope that what is happening is that you're beginning to see some different ways of thinking. Now, it's super important, because this is what we said every single week, and it's still true, and that's this. Our life is always moving in the direction of our strongest thoughts. So, last week we talked about some really powerful tools about, of filtering things through God's Word, and then banking the right stuff, and then memorizing and meditating on Scripture. And the challenge was to memorize a verse. Now, I don't know if you've done that or not, or maybe you're in the process of it, but I'll tell you what mine is. Mine is Psalm 19:14. And what I've done is I have written that verse on this 3x5 card. And I've been carrying the card around with me. And even though I don't know that I've got it perfect yet, as I continue to do it, if you do something like 21 days in a row, it really becomes ingrained in you. And so here's the verse, Psalm 19:14. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, O Lord, my strength and my Redeemer. Now I'm going to keep working on that and keep hiding that in my heart, because I just felt like, that's really important, particularly the things that we've been talking about here. It's so important to replace the lies of Satan with the truth of God. Because, if what we do is we recognize some of the things that Satan has told us, and we even take steps to get rid of those things, to destroy them, well, it's not enough if that's all we do. Because if we're leaving an empty space, or if we're leaving a vacuum, you know what will happen. It won't take very long for that space to be filled. And who wants to fill that space? It's Satan, and he's right there with more lies. Maybe it looks a little different, but it's the same old thing. And that's why it's so important to fill that space with God's truth. Now, we've been talking about allowing God to renew our mind. We've talked about how that our thoughts can be rewired, but here's something that is really important as well, and that is this: reframing our thoughts. Now, I want to start off by showing you this picture. Man, that looks good, doesn't it? How many of you love pumpkin pie, and it is a part of your Thanksgiving? How many of you, it doesn't matter whether it's Thanksgiving or not, you could eat pumpkin pie, 365. Well, I got to tell you, when it comes to pumpkin pie, I hate pumpkin pie. And, there's a reason. When we were growing up, Thanksgiving was a big deal, and it was pretty traditional. It was turkey, it was mashed potatoes and gravy. The things that make Thanksgiving great. And then we had some dressing, but I got to tell you, my mom, because of what my dad liked in dressing, she kind of ruined dressing, because she would put big whole oysters in the Thanksgiving dressing. So you're eating some Thanksgiving dressing, and all of a sudden this big lump just kind of slides down unexpectedly, and it was nasty, let me just tell you. Well, Pumpkin pie? I remember when I was just a little kid, I remember eating pumpkin pie. But I also remember that later that night, I got really sick. Projectile vomiting kind of sick. And I got to tell you that ever since that Thanksgiving evening and throwing up on the pumpkin pie, I don't eat pumpkin pie anymore. And it's not that pumpkin pie tastes bad, right? It doesn't taste like kale. But if I take more than a bite, I start to feel sick. And that happened a long time ago, and you might be listening to this going, there's a guy that has got some food issues, and you're probably right. The problem is not pumpkin pie, because, how many of you have eaten pumpkin pie and not gotten sick? Becky loves pumpkin pie, never seen her get sick as a result. The problem's not the pumpkin pie. The problem is my memory and the meaning that I associate with pumpkin pie. Now think about that for a second. The issue is probably not pumpkin pie, but it's how I view a circumstance or how I view a person. And what will change our thinking is that if we will choose to reframe our thoughts. Now here's a definition of reframing our thoughts. It's when life presents us with a situation, pumpkin pie. We usually decide what meaning the situation has for us almost immediately. You'll get sick. That meaning is the frame we give it. We don't have to continue viewing it in that frame, though. Instead, we can give it a different meaning by changing the way that we think and feel about it. And so, when we look at something, a situation, or maybe even a person, can we rethink that? Can we give it a different meaning by changing the way we think and feel about it? Now let me add one more thing to this mix, and it's another definition. It's called this, it's cognitive bias. We think something is true based on our personal experience or predetermined idea, and that's me. My personal experience and my predetermined idea, all about pumpkin pie, it absolutely affects how I view pumpkin pie. Now look, before you kind of stop watching, this is not mumbo jumbo. Paul wrote about this in Philippians chapter number 1, and it really is helpful when it comes to, all right, how do we renew our mind? How do we rewire the way we think? And how do we reframe the situations and circumstances and people that have been brought into our life? So you've downloaded those sermon notes, then here's the very first one. If we're going to reframe our thinking, then we have to create a different way of looking at a situation or a person. You've got to do that. Now look what Philippians chapter 1, verse number 12 says. Just the first part of this verse. And I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, that everything that has happened to me. Now there's more to this verse, but let's stop right here. Everything that has happened to me. Okay, so Paul's writing this. Well, what has happened to him? Well, a few things. Look at 2 Corinthians. And here's what it says in 2 Corinthians chapter number 11, starting in verse number 24. This is what's happened. 5 different times the Jewish leaders gave me 39 lashes. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Once I spent a whole night and a day adrift at sea. I've traveled on many long journeys. I've faced danger from rivers and from robbers. I've faced danger from my own people, the Jews, and as well as from the Gentiles. I've faced danger in the cities, in the desert, and on the seas. And I've faced danger from men who claim to be believers, but are not. I've worked hard and long, enduring many sleepless nights. I have been hungry and thirsty and have often gone without food. I have shivered in the cold without enough clothing to keep me warm. Wow. That is just some of the list of everything that has happened to me. If you were to look at these verses again, I mean, just a couple of the things that happened to Paul would have been plenty. But even as he's writing these words in Philippians, he is toward the end of a 2-year house arrest in Rome. Now, here's what you and everybody has this in common. It's this. We've got a list of lousy things that have happened to us. Now, it may not be the same list that the Apostle Paul has, but there are some really painful things that have happened to us. And there are some unfair things that we remember. We've got some scars, and maybe we're in a place where it's ongoing. Everyone has a list of lousy things that have happened to them. But here's something else. Everyone has an outlook about those lousy things. We look at what has happened through a frame, through a perspective. And the outlook that we have spills over into everything. And you know some people that their outlook has become their identity. I mean, it is just who they are. Look at this person. Yeah, Debbie Downer. I mean, it doesn't matter what happens, there is going to be a frame to look at it, and it's always going to be the worst case scenario, and it's always going to be negative, because that, no matter what happens, that's the frame that she is looking through. And it's true for all of us. Everything's going to be filtered through my outlook. And it affects me, and it affects others. It affects my relationship with God. So before we move on, you can't control what happens to you. That list that you have, that list that the Apostle Paul had, I mean, he wasn't, standing in line on the shipwreck line. I just want to, be shipwrecked, or, I want to be beaten with 39 lashes. I mean, none of that. So you can't control what happens to you. But here's what you and I, with the help of the Holy Spirit, can do. We can control how we frame it. We can control how we look at it. And so Paul, as he's talking about this list of what has happened to him, what does he do with it? Well, he reframes it. And if we're going to reframe our thoughts, here's what we need to do. We have to see the bigger picture. You can't get stuck in just the moment of this is what is happening to me right here and right now. If you're going to reframe how we see this, what our perspective is, then we have to see the bigger picture. Now, take a look at this picture, right? Well, you can look at that, but what happens if I put a frame on it? What happens if my frame is just this part of the picture? That's reframing what's happening, right? And if that's what you're doing, man, that looks pretty dark, pretty stormy, pretty gloomy. But I could also reframe it like right here. And even though it's the same picture, there's something way better about this frame. It's got sunshine and some hope in it. And so what we have to do is we have to, use a different frame, see a bigger picture. Now let's complete what Philippians 1:12 has to say. I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, that everything that has happened to me here has helped to spread the good news. I mean, so there is something more than what is going on immediately. Now, when Paul is writing this, we said, He's in house arrest. He's been there for a while. He's waiting, to stand in trial on his appeal. But man, there's something that is more than is going on. And Paul has reframed that list because all of this that happened to me has helped to spread the good news. As a Christian, everything that happens to us helps to spread the good news. It helps to conform us to the image of his Son. I mean, I want you to personalize this for a second. If you were writing this, and if you were to say, I want you to know, my dear brothers and sisters, that everything that has happened to me here has, and how would you fill in the blank? Have you framed it in such a way that you continually carry that burden? Have you framed it in such a way that you've never been able to heal from those things that have happened? Have you framed it in such a way that it just becomes a source of unforgiveness toward that person and bitterness? I mean, how are we framing what has happened to us, and how would we need to reframe it? Well, one way to look at the big picture is this. What is God teaching me? And that can happen no matter what. Not everything that happens to us is bad. There's some great things that happen to us as well. And there are lessons to learn even in the good things that happen to us. But what is God teaching me? Whether it's something that is good or something that is not. We know that the best lessons are often learned through the hardest trials. So I'm going through it, and I'll frame it all right. It stinks. But can we reframe it? Because we know that God is teaching me something. How can I look at a bigger picture? Well, not only can we see what God is teaching us, then we can also think, how is God developing my story? How is God strengthening my faith? How is he helping me to become more dependent upon him? How is my gratitude developing? How am I loving more? How am I forgiving more? The things that are on my list, the good things and the bad things, the bigger picture. How is God developing my story? And then that moves to the third one, and that is, who will be influenced? I mean, in Paul's life, the gospel was spread, and he was going through those things so that people could hear about what Jesus Christ has done for them. It's possible that you and I may be going through some things so that we might be able to influence someone, or we might be able to help someone. I mean, that when you're going through a difficult trial, the best person to come alongside you is the person that has already been through that trial. The person that has already got to the other side and has seen how God has worked and shares that story with you. It just may be that God is allowing some things to happen so that you will have an influence on somebody that is going to be in desperate need of hearing your story. So, Paul's got a list, and Paul is seeing the bigger picture, and he's reframing his thinking. And that brings us to the third thing, and that is this. If we're going to reframe our thinking, perspective is reality. Perspective is reality. Hey, I've got a pumpkin pie perspective, and it's not true. And but my perspective in my life has turned into reality. And it's the way it plays out in everybody's life, including Paul's. Look at the next verse, verse 13. For everyone here, including the whole palace guard, knows that I am in chains because of Christ. Now, here's Paul's perspective. I am in chains because of Christ. That is the choosing of perspective. That is the reframing of things. Because think about it. What if this verse said something along this lines? I know that I'm in chains because life is not fair. I know that I'm in chains because Christ doesn't love me. Look, I know that I'm in chains because that's the politics of things. I know I'm in chains because of that's just the way it always goes. You can fill in the blank with all sorts of things. But a perspective is, I am in chains because of Christ. And then here's the reality. It's the reality of the whole palace guard. The whole palace guard has been impacted by Paul's perspective, how he's reframed all of this, because the whole palace guard knows that's the reality. And they know that he is in chains, not because of some crime that he's committed, not because of anything else. They know that he's in chains because of Christ. And what an incredible influence that is, because the story of Paul's life matches up with the actions of Paul's life. Did Paul ever have different thoughts about the why he was in chains? Well, the Bible doesn't really say, but I don't know, maybe, probably. Did Paul have to practice what he had written to the Corinthian church about 6 years earlier? It's here in 2 Corinthians 10. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God and take every thought captive to obey Christ. Do you think that when Paul was under house arrest, he had a thought or two that he needed to take captive? Do you think that when he was shipwrecked, did he have a thought or two that needed to be taken captive? Or how about when he was, stranded out at sea or being beaten? I mean, there were so many things that list contained. But what he had to do was that he had to take every thought captive to obey Christ. It's how I look at things. It's my perspective. It's how I frame things. And there are some times that I need to reframe them. So think about this. Can you change your perspective about something you don't like? You can. It may take a little work and some effort, and to be conscious of it. Could I change my perspective about something as silly as pumpkin pie? Well, I'm sure I could. But it would take not the change in the pumpkin pie, it would take the change in how I am perceiving the pumpkin pie. I'd have to reframe that. Is there something in your life, okay, hopefully it's not something as silly as pumpkin pie, but is there something in your life that you don't like? And there are things like that, but do we need to change our perspective? And this is the tougher of the two questions. Can you change your perspective about someone you don't like? You know, that person that, you've been in conflict with, a person that you're holding on to some unforgiveness or bitterness toward. Is there someone that just kind of immediately comes to mind in terms of changing your perspective? Maybe you framed something or someone into something or someone that's just not true. Now we're talking about reframing our thinking. And here's the fourth one. To reframe our thinking, we have to look for God's goodness. I mean, here's Paul's story. Verse 14. And because of my imprisonment, most of the believers here have gained confidence and boldly speak God's message without fear. You see, when he's talking about because of my imprisonment, again, these words right here could have been a lot different. Because of my imprisonment, I can't travel where I want to travel. Because of my imprisonment, I can't come see you in the city of Philippi. I'm having to write this letter. I mean, there's all sorts of things that he could write. But what he chooses to do is to see God's goodness. and to see what is happening, that most of the believers here have confidence and boldly speak God's message without fear. There is a thankfulness embedded in this verse in spite of the circumstances. And there is a trust and a belief in God's character. And if you were to fill in this blank, and because of my, what? Maybe not imprisonment, but what might it be? Whatever it may be, do you see God's goodness? Do you see him as a good Father? 1 Thessalonians 5:18 says this. It says, "Be thankful in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you who belong to Christ Jesus." I mean, this reframes things. It helps us to look beyond the moment. I mean, have you ever been thankful for something that didn't happen? Have you ever been, ready to fly somewhere, and then over the intercom there is a announcement that there is a mechanical issue, and now you're going to be delayed 2 or 3 hours? Well, boy, nobody likes that. But aren't you glad that that mechanical issue was found while you were there on the ground versus while you were up in the air at 35,000 feet? You might think to yourself, man, this summer has been hot and my electric bill is sky high. Well, you can reframe that. You can reframe it and say, okay, you know what? I've got a high electric bill, but it also means that I have a house and an air conditioner. And you could think through all sorts of examples where we reframe things through God's goodness. I mean, look at this again, this picture. Well, if you look at it, there is some storm and there's some rain here. How could you reframe that? How could you look at that in a little different way? One way you could look at it is just say, okay, you know what? Man, God is bringing some much needed rain. And God is in control. And I can trust God with whatever he's taking me through. I mean, you could look back over here and you could reframe this. You go, okay, wow, man, I'm so thankful for this good time. I'm thankful for this time in my family. I'm thankful for this time in my marriage. I'm thankful in my job. I'm thankful for the hope that this gives. Or you could just look at the entire big picture here and understand that, you know what? This is what God does. I can be thankful for all of it because God uses everything. Even some of the most painful things in our lives. Rick Warren often says that God never wastes a hurt. And now that list that we have, there's something on that list that God has brought some good out of. What is it that I can be thankful for? In the middle of when it is hard to be thankful, I need to look for God's goodness. Let's close with Psalm 136. It says, "Oh, give thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the God of gods, for his mercy endures forever. Oh, give thanks to the Lord of lords, for his mercy endures forever." And in those 3 verses, there are 3 times that it says, for his mercy endures forever. And even if you're in the middle of a situation that you might be finding some hard, difficult things to be thankful for, we can always think back to his grace. We can think back to the time that we became a Christian through his mercy, where he gave us opportunity, and that God's goodness and his mercy goes beyond the moment. It endures forever. So, God gives us the tools to be able to rewire our thinking. He gives us the tools to be able to renew our mind. we're able to reframe our perspective. And when we do those things and begin to practice those things, that's what really allows us to embrace God's truth about us, and then also to destroy the lies that Satan tells about us. Now, at the very bottom of your sermon notes, there are a few questions, and maybe the people that are in the room, maybe you'll take just a moment or two and discuss those questions and get some additional insight. And then if there's something that you just like to contact me about or our church about, you can always email me, and several of you did last week, and thank you. Jeff@bridgepointchurch.com, and if you've got something that you need to pray about, or something that you just have a physical need. We were able to meet some needs last week as a result of this context, so please feel free to do that. Now, next week, we're going to deal with one of the biggest lies that Satan tells us. It affects every single one of us, and it's something that we're really going to have to get a handle on in terms of the battle in our mind between God's truth and Satan's lie. Let me pray for you. God, we're thankful we're able to be able to have these conversations, be able to look at your word. And Lord, how good your word is. It gives us those principles that help us to understand things, but then there's the practical application to help us do things. And Lord, when we begin to wrestle with this, even later today or sometime this week, I pray, Lord, that we would look back to reframe our perspective and our thinking so that we can see your goodness in it. Thankful for your grace, thankful for your mercy that endures forever. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. See you back next week.
Oh, and I've heard 1,000 stories of what they think you're like, but I've heard the tender whisper of love in the dead of a night, and you tell me that you're pleased and that I'm never alone. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Oh, and I've seen many searching for answers far and wide, but I know that we're all searching for answers. Only you provide, 'cause you know just what we need before we say a word. You're a good, good father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are. And I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. Lord, you are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. You are perfect in all of your ways. You are perfect in all of your ways, Jesus. You are perfect in all of your ways to us. Oh, it's love so undeniable, I can hardly speak. Peace so unexplainable. I can hardly think as you call me, deeper still as you call me, deeper still as you call me, deeper still, and love, love, love. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am. You're a good, good Father. It's who you are. It's who you are. It's who you are, and I'm loved by you. It's who I am. It's who I am. It's who I am.
Like I said earlier, I have some important information for you. First is we want to invite you to join our brand new online community. It's a Facebook page called Bridgepoint Home. You will find that link in the description below. Hey families with elementary age kids, if you are looking for a great way to connect in person, we have some exciting news. Starting Wednesdays, September 16th at 6:30 p.m., we are kicking back off Wired Wednesdays. If you have kids from kindergarten to 5th grade, join us for dinner, Bible teaching, and some fun family activities. Go to your Church Center app to register or go to the link in the description below. This announcement is for us ladies. Join us September 19th at 2 p.m. Stories Unveiled is hosting their 3rd annual conference. We are so excited because this year it is not only virtual, but it's free. For more information and to register, go to storiesunveiledconference.com. With all the cool things that Bridgepoint Church is able to do, we are only able to make them happen because of your generosity. If you would like to financially partner with Bridgepoint, you can do that one of 3 ways. First, you can use your Church Center app. Simply hit the Give tab. Another way to give digitally is to go to bridgepointchurch.com/giving. The last way is to simply pop a check in the mail to the address on your screen. However you choose to give, thank you for your faithfulness. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, right back here, 11 a.m. next Sunday. Have a great week.